Thanks, Jeff, for joining us on Winning Ways today.
No problem.
You've been a kind of pioneer of sorts when it comes to starting the startup ecosystem around Asia. I mean, that's what we read about you. So, I mean, where did it all begin?
As you guys may or may not know, I'm from Singapore. I went to school in LA in the US, and then started working in the IT industry there. Now I came back in 2000 to start a venture fund for a listed company. So that's how it all started. Looking at tech companies back in the first boom in the region. So that's how everything first started. But I think your question probably more pertains to what happened when I came back finally. So I was away from 2003 to 2009, and then I came back for good 2010. So that's where I came back. So the reason is there were quite a bit of activity on the government side in Singapore, 2007-8, when the iGEM program started with MDA and the NRF. So I saw that, there is a push from the government side, but not all the pieces were moving well or fitted well. So one major part was the mentor layer at that time wasn't very strong in Singapore. So I brought something called the Found Institute from the US to Singapore in 2010. That's how I finally came back. So I came back with the incubator and sort of started it in Singapore.
So Founders Institute, I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about it? I mean, what's been the activities there and what do you do here in Singapore?
Yeah, so Found Institute started 2009 in the Bay Area by a gentleman called Adeo Resi, who's a serial entrepreneur. If you read up a little bit, he's pretty famous in the US. The concept is quite simple. It's a 4 months long night school that you attend once a week. It is for aspiring technology entrepreneurs that have one or many ideas in their head. So we don't accept people based on ideas. We accept people based on actually your personality test. So we have an online aptitude test. So if you look at it that way, it's really an early stage idea incubator, right? You haven't built anything. You probably haven't even quit your day job. So that's the concept back then. It was more of, can we find founders with the correct aptitude and then help them build the ideal company for them together alongside them. So that's how we started 2010. I think Singapore was the first city, first chapter in Asia. I think we now have over 120 cities worldwide, 6 years on. Yeah.
So at Founders Institute, I mean, do you think that, training entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, is that something which is possible, or is this more about hand-holding them and getting them to solve their own questions or problems? I mean, how does it work? Yeah,
so I've done this for 6 years. I've done this 8 times here. My conclusion is entrepreneurship can be taught, but not everyone will be good founders. 20% of a good founder is actually your DNA, it's actually genetics, what you're born with. So a lot of the Ivy League schools in the US will tell you, I can train anyone to be an entrepreneur. To me, it's right to say you can train anyone to be an entrepreneur, but you cannot train anyone to be a good entrepreneur. Bad ones, yes. But the top flight type of entrepreneurs, most of them are born. Yeah, they are born with it. You just need to find them, which is what we do. Find them and then give them the tools and then let them figure it out themselves. Then the second thing is, you need to guide them to learn what they need to know and what they want to do. You cannot feed them and tell them what to do. Usually that don't work. They will give up, they will stop, they'll have issues. So these guys needs to take it all in and then figure out what they want to do. Some of them are quick starters, some of them takes a couple of years to digest this and then they will leave and start their own companies. So it takes sometimes it takes a long time. It takes like 4 years before they start. So I would say definitely teachable, but not everyone has that aptitude.
At Golden Gate Ventures, I mean, what's the activity that is going on now? I mean, I believe one of your founding thoughts was to get a Silicon Valley kind of culture here in Singapore. I mean, how far have you been successful in that, and does Singapore have the kind of mindset to be a kind of a Silicon Valley?
Yeah, so there's two questions here. So the first thing is we all work in the Valley. That's why we sort of name it Golden Gate Ventures. Most of our partners are from the US. Initially, what we thought was because the ecosystems here were kind of early, we wanted to bring some of the best practices from the Valley here so that they can get started a little bit quicker. Sometimes that works quite well, but most of the time there is a certain way of doing things in a local context, in the regional context, that doesn't fit the US, right? So taking a best practice and applying it here for some context doesn't work. But generic context, yeah, most of the things that are being taught, the things that are being done in the US works here. So that's what we found. Like over the years, we found that our value add would be bringing the best practices that works and implement it here faster. The other one is some portfolios actually have a bigger ambition to be global from day one. So we help them transition to the US, we help them move there, we help them raise money there. And then majority of them, usually wants to make a trip there just to get immersed in the ecosystem, just to understand how things are being done, how things are being thought, how big ideas sort of come about. So we do bring them over there just to meet people. But most of the execution is still back home, so they'll learn some stuff and then they'll come back and try to apply it. But again, like I said, not all things are applicable here.
Some of the companies I believe that you invested in have been highly successful in terms of exits. Yeah? So, I mean, what's been your kind of mantra when you look at a startup and decide to invest in it?
So we invest fairly early stage, right? So we do seed and Series A. So we are much better at seed stage because we've been doing that since 2012. Because of the stage or where we are, a lot of it relies a lot on the founder, right? So the founding team, how well they know each other, what they've done before, what motivates them to do this particular thing as opposed to million other things they can possibly do. So a lot of it is motivation, a lot of it is trying to identify the DNA, whether they are good founders or not, whether they know their gaps or not. So a lot of it is just figuring out the type of founders we want to work with and vice versa. So I think that's pretty much the most common answer you'll get if you ask most investors. But because people types are different, we like different types of founders. Some likes the mid-career guys, some likes the serial guys, some likes the fresh grad engineering types who doesn't talk too much. You have different types of people. So generally it's just identifying the people, but it's more to it, right? It's just the team and then the idea and then the market and then watching them kind of like execute, which is another thing that you get most of the time. The answer that you get most of the time is execution. So everything has to be aligned, right? Good team, bad idea, we'll say we'll wait first. Good idea, bad team, we'll obviously say pass. So we need to see a few things aligned. We need to see them executed before. Oh, cool! These guys have done A, B, C, D, E. It's kind of cool. Or while we are watching them for maybe 2 months, we've seen a lot of things moving and moving very quickly. So it's just these little pieces that if they are sort of aligned together, then it's something that we will pursue further.
So has there been some? I guess from what you're saying, founding the team comes at the number one position. So has there been any instance where you came across a fantastic team, but somehow the idea they were working on was not probably great, and you kind of suggested them something else to do? I mean, has there been any instance like that?
Yeah, so there are two types of good teams. Some are the vision and the idea is good, but they don't have the right founding team to execute on. The other one is they are very, very strong engineers, but their idea are kind of not there yet. So sometimes you will see these two groups. I think for founders who pitch to me that I'm close to, sometimes it's the founder institute guys. Sometimes they were my grads like a few years ago, and then now they're ready to start companies. I'll be a bit more blunt. I'll just say, this doesn't sound interesting, but if you really want to do it, go do it, because you're engineers, you can build anything, so just build it. But if you do this, I'm interested. Right? If you do this, not really, but prove me wrong, right? So I kind of like challenge them. But if I don't know them very well, I probably don't say so much. I'll just say sure, and then let them, because it's very difficult to say do this, I'll fund you, right? Because then you don't know what their motivation is. Like, oh, I do this and I get money. Like, then I don't really want to invest. I want you to genuinely want to do this. So we kind of hint on a few things. It's just like any mentoring. We kind of like, okay, this will get you this, you'll probably die. And then we'll just leave it as that, and then we'll let them kind of digest it and figure it out. And if they do change direction and they update us, then yeah, we'll take a look at it further. Yeah.
I mean, most VCs have a appetite for a certain kind of technology or a certain domain. Is there something at Golden Gate, I mean, you have a preference over a particular domain or something like that?
Actually, we have, I think ever since we started, we don't really invest in themes. We kind of know that certain themes are there, right? Like e-commerce and certain e-commerce infrastructure and marketplaces. These are pretty standard stuff that should exist in this region. So we think that early ecosystems, if we go by themes, we will miss a lot of unique ideas that come out. So we kind of like, no themes, I just want to meet everybody. Because we are kind of founder-centric anyway, so we just kind of like meet everybody. So what ended up happening, yeah, we have done e-commerce, we've done marketplaces, we've done payments, we've done some B2B SaaS. So the portfolio is kind of pretty interesting, pretty diverse, sort of. And a lot of it is more founder-driven. Like, I meet these great guys, and then they are doing this, and then I'm like, okay, it fits kind of what I think will work, and if it doesn't, we'll just watch him and see what happens. So not really, but to answer your question, nowadays what we have been seeing, I think Southeast Asia tends to be still consumer centric a little bit more. I think fintech is coming up last year, transcending to this year, but it's very difficult to do. But if you find something cool, there might be opportunity, because it's difficult to do. So then recently on the West, it's more bots and AI stuff, which here tends to be a little bit more niche. If it's AI, it'll be niche to a B2B. Bots is completely doesn't exist here yet, but it will come probably in the next year. So those things will slowly start to come up, creep over here from the West. But what I've seen recently is a lot of kind of clones of Chinese companies. So in the past it was clone US, then they found that it's too early, then they clone Japan, because Japan cloned the US, then it's kind of just nice. Then now some of it is too late sometimes. Then if they want to clone India, it's too late. So then because a lot of Indians clone Chinese, so now it's like shifting the to Chinese. Oh, if I can clone Chinese, then by the time I launch, the Chinese are here, and they might want to invest in me or buy me. So now a little bit more looking at the way Chinese does it, but it's very different how they do it and how we do it, because they have a lot more money there than here.
But isn't this more kind of dictated by the investors? Because typically investors in Asia want to see a successful model being replicated rather than probably putting money into something which has not been tested so far.
Yes and no. Investors, some of us knows, because we see so many things, we can kind of say, hey, how come this thing doesn't exist, right? Then we kind of look for a team, and if they're kind of not sure and I like the team, maybe I suggest them to do this. But the reality is actually we don't have time for that. So it's usually founders pitch us, this should exist, right? Then look at this example here, look at this example there, right? So usually the founders come. If I have my choice, I would fund non-copycats, but that's like 10% of everything here. So 90% are copycats, so you have no choice really. So I would say that it's probably more founder kind of centric, right? And the reason majority of deals are clones is because majority of founders are non-technical. So the fastest way to launch something unique is to copy someone and then find a technical co-founder to build it, because you don't have to invent it, you just have to build it. So that's the reason why in the last 4 or 5 years most things are copycats. And then as it sort of moved along, kind of like China did, it will have a bit of local kind of tweaks, right? So that it's a bit more unique locally, but on a high level it's the same as any other thing that you see. But when you go deeper, it's very, very local. Yeah.
Any technologies on the horizon that really excite you? I mean, that you're really looking forward to in terms of?
So right now, I'm a little bit more interested in the AI space. VR, virtual reality, a little bit, but majority of innovations probably won't come from here. It's probably from the US or Israel or Korea. And then still pretty proactive looking at the payment space or the financial technology space in this region. And being from this region, I love to see companies that are addressing the bottom of the pyramid, like the 1 billion. Most of them are usually on the top end, and then we have funded a few that are more mass market. So I want to look at more things that are mass market. And we have not done an agriculture tech company yet. I'd love to do one of that. And of course, a little bit more healthcare. We have one healthcare company, but love to do more of that as well. Yeah.
What, according to you, are the winning ways for a startup? I mean, you did mention earlier on about the team, the idea, execution, and stuff like that. I mean, with so many wannabe startups out there, I mean, what do you think are, with your experience, I mean, what kind of startups really,
Yeah, so there are maybe 3 things. One, the first most important is the motivation. Why do you do what you do? And ideas usually start with one founder, right? And is super passionate, and there's a problem they want to solve, and there is something I want to see exist in the world. So that person needs to be clear. Why do they want to do this? Right now, too much noise. Typical good founder probably have like 3 good ideas a week. So why are you doing that particular one, right? And it could be incubating. You could have been incubating ideas for like a year, and you can just imagine how many ideas pops up. Why that one, right? That's the first thing. So most founders need to ask themselves, why do they want to do this? Second would be, do you have the team around you to do this? Most founders forget that, especially if you're younger, fresh grad, not clear what you want to do. Your founders are friends. You think you can do everything. So those people will fall into some issues when they are trying to execute. But usually seasoned executives, more mature founders, they tend to know that, okay, I like this idea, but if I don't have my team to do this, then it's just an idea. So they kind of know that. The younger ones, they don't know that because they have never been in business long enough to know that. So the second one is, do you have the right team to do it? Lastly, it's just focus, because when you pick something you want to do and you're motivated, you have the team motivated, everyone's all pumped up, you get distracted very easily. You get excited every day, you cannot sleep every day because you're so excited. You want to do 10 things at once, right? So you have like no people, no money, you want to do 10 things at once. So chances are you either burn out or you do 10 things mediocrely, right? So they need to focus and do one thing well, one revenue model, one target segment, one country, one language, and just go for it. So getting the founding team to focus is the number one problem after all this, right? And once they are clear on this, the rest seems to be kind of right team, right idea, right timing, right everything, sort of like right motivation, and then you focus and you don't get distracted. Then your execution starts to click, right? On a day-to-day, 8-hour, 10-hour day, every single thing you do is pushing that focus, right? If you're distracted, then you're not doing anything, literally. You're like doing 10 things, but nothing is done. So if they just kind of remember these 3 things, should be fine.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you.